the question of mind. For as long as human beings have been able to wonder, we have asked one question more profound than any other. What is the mind? It is the silent observer behind the eyes, the dreamer who dreams and awakens only to discover another dream. It is the voice that reasons, the presence that remembers, the mystery that cannot be seen but moves all things. Across centuries, mystics, philosophers, and scientists have each tried to touch its edges. Some said it was the breath of the soul. Others believed it was the firing of nerves and the play of matter. Between these two visions, the spiritual and the scientific, there arose a gulf, wide and bitter. Religion claimed the invisible, science claimed the observable. And between them, the truth of human consciousness was divided. In the late 19th century, when the world was still shaken by Darwin's revelation of evolution and the church was grasping for ground, there emerged a man named Thomson Jay Hudson. He was not a prophet, nor a priest, but a thinker standing at the crossroads of two worlds, the old world of faith and the new world of reason. Hudson sought what few dared to seek, a scientific explanation for the unseen powers of the mind. His book, The Law of Psychic Phenomena, published in 1893, attempted to build a bridge between two domains that had long been at war. It proposed that all the mysteries of hypnotism, telepathy, faith healing, intuition, and even religious experience could be understood through a single law, a law as natural as gravity but infinitely more subtle, the law of mind itself. Hudson's vision was radical for his time. He suggested that the human mind was not one but two. One part conscious, reasoning, and deliberate. The other subconscious, vast, and obedient to suggestion. To him, this explained the miracles of faith, the wonders of hypnosis, and the spontaneous healings that science could not yet explain. What religion called divine intervention, Hudson saw as the lawful operation of the subconscious under suggestion. But beneath this dual structure lay something greater still, a whisper of the infinite, the realm he called the superconscious, where inspiration, genius, and communion with higher intelligence arise. It was in this trinity, the conscious, the subconscious, and the superconscious, that Hudson found the outline of a grand, unseen architecture of the soul. And yet what he offered was not dogma. It was an invitation, to see faith not as superstition, but as a natural law of the mind. If belief could heal, if suggestion could shape destiny, if prayer could move the subconscious into action, then perhaps the miracles of the spirit were not violations of nature, but expressions of its deepest law. This then is the beginning of a journey, not through theology or mysticism alone, but through the inner mechanics of consciousness itself. To understand Hudson's vision is to understand the silent forces that govern our thoughts, our emotions, and our lives. So let us begin as he did, not with belief but with inquiry. Let us enter the laboratory of the soul, chapter I, the two minds. To understand the law of psychic phenomena, Hudson said, one must first understand that man is not governed by a single mind but by two. This idea, though ancient in essence, was revolutionary in language. For centuries, mystics had spoken of the higher and lower self, the spirit and the flesh, the divine and the mortal. Hudson translated this duality into scientific form, the objective mind and the subjective mind, what we now call the conscious and the subconscious. The conscious mind, he said, is the reasoning mind. It perceives through the senses, weighs evidence, judges and decides. It is the architect of logic and the servant of the intellect. The subconscious mind, however, is the deeper current that moves beneath awareness, a mind that never sleeps, never forgets, and never doubts. Where the conscious mind analyzes, the subconscious obeys. It accepts every idea impressed upon it, whether true or false, as fact. This was Hudson's key discovery. The subconscious mind is amenable to suggestion. It acts upon the ideas that reach it, regardless of their origin, and works ceaselessly to bring them into reality. If a person believes they are ill, the subconscious will sustain that belief through the body. If they believe they are healed, the same power will move toward restoration. It does not reason, it fulfills. And in this lies both the danger and the promise of human consciousness. Hudson likened the conscious and subconscious to two travelers, one holding the map, the other carrying the strength. The conscious directs, the subconscious accomplishes. The conscious chooses the path, the subconscious walks it with. In our waking life, we imagine we are guided solely by logic, but in truth, logic is only the surface of a far deeper sea. Our habits, emotions, instincts, and even much of our reasoning are shaped by impressions stored within the subconscious long before our awareness arose. The words of a parent, the tone of a teacher, the echoes of past pain, These linger as living commands influencing thought and behavior long after they are forgotten. To Hudson, this understanding explained both the ordinary and the extraordinary. It explained why hypnosis could make a person act beyond their conscious control, because, under suggestion, the subconscious accepted new commands as reality. It explained why faith healers could produce cures, because belief itself, when firmly impressed, becomes a directive to the subconscious, which governs the functions of the body. It even explained why prayer, ritual, and meditation across all ages held power, not by divine favoritism, but by the lawful movement of the subconscious mind under belief. Yet Hudson was careful not to dismiss the spiritual dimension. He believed the subconscious was not merely a machine of habit, but a gateway, a channel connecting the finite human self with the infinite intelligence of the universe. Through this channel, intuition speaks. Through it, genius finds inspiration. What the mystic calls revelation, the scientist might call subc. Conscious illumination. In every age, he noted, the greatest discoveries arise not from logic alone, but from moments of sudden insight, flashes of knowing that arrive unbidden. Newton's falling apple, Archimedes' cry of Eureka, Mozart hearing entire symphonies in his mind, all he believed were examples of the subconscious mind communicating with the conscious, translating deeper knowledge into human thought. Hudson's theory aligned with what modern psychology would later confirm, that the conscious mind is but a narrow beam of awareness shining upon a vast field of unconscious processes. Behind every decision lies a multitude of unseen judgments, memories, and patterns. The subconscious is the reservoir of every impression, every emotion, every forgotten dream, and from it flow the currents that shape destiny. But the relationship between these two minds is not equal. The subconscious is powerful but childlike. The conscious is weak but directive. When the conscious mind ceases to govern, as in sleep, trance, or deep emotion, the subconscious assumes control. In dreams, we see its world without boundaries, a landscape of symbols, impossible logic, and hidden desires. In hypnosis, we witness its obedience, where a mere suggestion becomes unquestioned reality. Hudson observed countless demonstrations of this in his study of hypnotism. He saw subjects made insensible to pain, their pulse and temperature changed by a word. He saw individuals induced to act, speak, or remember at command, as though the will itself had been transferred from one mind to another. And yet, he insisted, these were not supernatural feats, but the simple operation of law, the law of suggestion acting upon the subjective mind. For him, this law explained much of what religion had clothed in mystery. The miracle, the vision, the act of faith, all could be understood as the subconscious responding to the dominating idea of belief. It was not blasphemy, he said, to see God's law in nature. Rather, it was reverence of the highest kind, to recognize that spirit works through order, not violate. And Hudson W.R. Oat, faith is the vital principle of the soul. The subconscious mind acts only upon conviction, and conviction is but another name for faith. Thus, to believe is to command the unseen machinery of the mind. To doubt is to halt it. And every man and woman, knowingly or not, lives according to T.'s law. He saw in this a profound moral implication, that we are responsible not only for our actions but for our thoughts. For the subconscious, being impressionable, records every thought as an instruction, every emotion as a command. Fear begets fear, hope begets fulfillment. The law is impartial, it does not judge what we plant, it merely causes it to grow. This, he believed, was why human progress begins within. The reformer who tries to change society without changing minds fights shadows. The one who awakens belief transforms the world. For every institution, every discovery, every revolution begins first as an idea impressed upon the mind of one. And so, Hudson's first great revelation was not mystical at all, but practical. He gave to the world a law that could be tested, not in temples but in life itself. What the subconscious accepts as true, it strives to make real. It was a quiet revolution. For in that single sentence lay the seed of modern psychology, the foundation of hypnosis, the principles of psychotherapy, and the metaphysical movements that would follow. It was the scientific dawn of what mystics had always intuited, that thought is causative, that belief shapes experience, that consciousness itself is the creative force of life. But Hudson did not stop there. For if the subconscious could be moved by belief, then belief must obey a deeper order. If suggestion worked by law, then the law itself must arise from a higher source. Beyond the conscious and subconscious, he sensed another presence. A realm of mind not personal but universal, not bound by time but containing it. It was to this realm, the superconscious, that he would turn next. For if man is the meeting of two minds, then perhaps he is also the reflection of a third, the infinite intelligence that moves through all things. Chapter 2, The Law of Suggestion. The key that unlocks the hidden workings of the subconscious, Hudson said, is suggestion. Suggestion is not merely a word spoken by one person to another. It is the silent influence of idea upon idea, the unseen movement of belief from the surface of thought into the depths of conviction. Every human mind lives within an atmosphere of suggestion, the constant exchange of impressions, expectations, and emotions that flow between ourselves and the world. From birth, we are shaped by the suggestions that reach us. The tone of a parent's voice, the confidence or fear in their eyes, the repetition of words spoken in authority, all enter the subconscious and become the unseen rules of life. Before we can reason, we are already programmed by suggestion. We learn what is possible, what is forbidden, what we are worthy of, and what we must fear, not by logic but by the emotional force of the words and actions that surround us. Hudson recognized that suggestion operates under law, constant, impartial, and universal. Just as gravity pulls every object toward the earth, so does suggestion draw every impression toward realization within the subconscious. It is through suggestion that faith healing occurs, that hypnosis works, that habit forms, that nations believe, and that civilizations rise. Our fall. To the objective mind, suggestion appears subtle and invisible. To the subjective mind it is command. Once an idea enters the subconscious with sufficient intensity, repetition, or emotional charge, it is accepted as true and begins to act as a directive upon the body, the emotions, and the destiny of the individual. Hudson's experiments in hypnotism gave him undeniable evidence of this power. He found that, under hypnosis, a subject could be made blind, deaf, or insensible to pain simply by being told that such a condition existed. Tell them their hand is burning and their pulse quickens, their skin reddens, the body obeys. Tell them they are surrounded by light and they feel peace and warmth. No matter how impossible the suggestion, once accepted, the subconscious brings it into experience. And yet, this same law operates in the waking state. Every thought repeated, every fear rehearsed, every hope sustained becomes a hypnotic command impressed upon our deeper mind. We hypnotize ourselves daily, by our words, our expectations, our emotional patterns. And the world, in turn, hypnotizes us, through culture, and belief. Hudson called this the law of suggestion. Every idea accepted by the subjective mind tends to realize itself, unless counteracted by a stronger idea. To him, this was the very foundation of psychic phenomena, the key that made all mysteries intelligible. There were no supernatural powers at play, only natural laws of mind operating beyond ordinary awareness. When faith healed, it did so through suggestion. When prayer moved mountains, it did so by impressing conviction upon the subconscious, which then drew the necessary means for fulfillment. When mediums produced visions or trance communications, it was, in Hudson's view, the subconscious dramatizing its impressions and beliefs through imagery and speech. This was a radical notion, not because it denied the spiritual, but because it explained it without superstition. Hudson saw that the human mind, when deeply convinced, could produce effects indistinguishable from miracle. Faith could cure the body, imagination could shape perception, belief could alter the rhythm of the heart. If such results were once thought divine, it was only because the divine itself works through law. To understand this law, one must see suggestion not as an external influence, but as the very process by which thought becomes form. Every word spoken with conviction is a seed cast into the soil of the subconscious. Every image vividly imagined is a mold into which reality may flow. The subconscious is not selective, it does not judge truth or falsehood, it responds only to the emotio. Intensity of the idea. In this sense, all prayer, all affirmation, all imagination, and all fear are the same in essence, forms of suggestion. They differ only in the intention behind them. Hudson observed that a single dominant idea, held with faith, can override 100 weaker thoughts. The subconscious does not weigh quantity, it obeys strength. A single conviction, felt with emotion and sustained without contradiction, will ultimately direct the course of experience. This is why, he wrote, the healer's confidence is often more powerful than the patient's doubt. The one who believes MOST strongly commands the field. Through hypnotism, Hudson demonstrated this principle again and again. A hypnotized subject could be told that a glass of water was wine, and upon tasting it, would display all the symptoms of intoxication. He could be told that a coin placed upon his hand was burning hot, and a blister would appear where none should be. He could be told that his pain was gone, and the relief would be instantaneous. Such phenomena could not be dismissed as fraud or chance. They revealed that the body itself is subject to the mind, and the mind is subject to belief. But Hudson's insight went deeper than the laboratory. He saw that the law of suggestion governs not only the extraordinary but the ordinary, that our daily thoughts and words are the quiet hypnotists of our destiny. To tell oneself, "I cannot," is a suggestion. To repeat "I will," is another. Every phrase spoken with feeling becomes a command to the subconscious, and he subconscious, being faithful, obeys. The tragedy of ignorance is that most people live under the tyranny of negative suggestion. From youth they are told that they are weak, limited, sinful, or unworthy, and their subconscious accepts these verdicts as fact. The result is a life hemmed in by invisible chains, a mind enslaved by its own programming. Yet the same law that enslaves can also liberate. To reverse the current of thought is to reverse the current of life. Hudson believed that this understanding placed a new kind of power into human hands, a moral and spiritual responsibility. If suggestion shapes experience, then every thought must be regarded as a cause. Every word spoken in anger, every image of fear, every doubt rehearsed in silence is a seed whose fruit will appear in time. But so too is every word of faith, every act of gratitude, every image of healing. We are gardeners in the field of consciousness. ND suggestion is the instrument of cultivation that he urged his readers to become conscious suggestors, to replace the chaos of unguarded thought with deliberate belief. To use affirmation, visualization, and prayer not as superstition, but as the rightful exercise of the mind's creative law. This was the psychological foundation of what later generations would call positive thinking, mind cure, and mental science. But Hudson's version was neither shallow optimism nor blind faith. It was disciplined understanding, the recognition that thought, emotion, and belief are forces governed by order. He wrote that the subconscious accepts suggestion most readily when the conscious mind is relaxed or suspended. This occurs naturally in states of reverie, meditation, and sleep. Thus, the moments before sleep and after waking are gates to the deeper mind. He recommended that one impress constructive ideas during these times, ideas of health, peace, and achievement, for then the subconscious is most receptive. What is impressed upon it during these transitions tends to unfold throughout the day and night, shaping both thought and circumstance. N.C. Hudson compared suggestion to the steering of a ship. The conscious mind holds the wheel but only when it knows how to command. The subconscious is the vast engine below deck, tirelessly moving toward whatever direction the rudder is set. If the captain falls asleep or forgets his course, the ship drifts wherever the currents pull. But when he remains alert and deliberate, the voyage follows his intention. So it is with the man-mind. He also warned that suggestion, like any law, is impartial. It will serve truth or falsehood, good or evil, with equal precision. It is the responsibility of the conscious mind to direct it wisely. For while belief can heal, it can also harm. The same principle that produces faith can sustain fear. The same force that cures disease can create it misdirected. Hudson illustrated this through the phenomenon of nocebo. Though he did not use that term, the idea was clear. When a person believes they are cursed, ill, or doomed, the subconscious fulfills that belief with exactness. When a culture instills fear, it reproduces the symptoms of its own expectation. In every age, epidemics of belief have proven as powerful as epidemics of germs. For suggestion, when collective, becomes a social force. It shapes nations as surely as it shapes bodies. He saw this law at work in religion as well. Rituals, sacraments, confessions, and prayers, all are forms of suggestion designed to reach the subconscious through symbolism, repetition, and emotion. When performed with faith, they produce transformation. When performed mechanically, they lose their power. Thus, the effectiveness of any spiritual practice depends not on the external form, but on the inner conviction with which it is done. Hudson was careful not to dismiss the sacred in this analysis. He did not claim that suggestion replaced God, but that it revealed the method by which the divine works through human consciousness. If faith moves mountains, it is because faith aligns the subconscious with the higher order of life. If miracles occur, it is because the law of mind allows the invisible to become visible through belief. Hudson was careful not to dismiss the sacred in this analysis. He did not claim that suggestion replaced God, but that it revealed the method by which the divine works through human consciousness. If faith moves mountains, it is because faith aligns the subconscious with the higher order of life. If miracles occur, it is because the law of mind allows the invisible to become visible through belief. Hudson saw that mastery of this law required three things: understanding, faith, and consistency. To understand is to know that suggestion governs all mental activity. To have faith is to trust the law's operation without doubt. To be consistent is to impress the same idea until it becomes conviction. He wrote, "Faith is not an emotion, it is a fixed idea in the subjective mind." In other words, true faith is suggestion made permanent. It is not the fleeting hope of the intellect, but the calm certainty of the deeper self. Once the subconscious accepts an idea as truth, it no longer questions, it acts. And this action, though unseen, sets in motion the chain of causes and effects that manifest in experience. Modern science, Hudson predicted, would one day confirm this law. And indeed, decades later, psychology and neuroscience began to reveal the mechanisms by which suggestion operates, through expectation, perception, and the self-regulating systems of the brain and body. What Hudson called the subjective mind, we now recognize as the subconscious networks that regulate emotion, immune response, and behavior. What he described as faith, we now see as the neurobiological state of coherence between belief and physiology. His insight, once ridiculed, foreshadowed discoveries that would not arrive for nearly a century. Yet Hudson's vision extended beyond experiment and theory. He saw suggestion not merely as a scientific law, but as a moral art, the art of aligning thought with truth. He urged humanity to rise above fear and superstition, to use the creative power of mind consciously and compassionately. For if the law of suggestion is the law of life, then we are its custodians. Each thought, each belief, each intention ripples outward, influencing the collective mind of the world. He wrote that every age has its prevailing suggestion, its central belief about reality. In ancient times, it was the rule of the gods. In the modern age, it is the supremacy of matter. But a new suggestion, he said, is dawning, the belief that consciousness itself is the foundation of all things. When this belief becomes collective, the world will transform. And so, in the law of suggestion, Hudson found both a science of the soul and a prophecy of human evolution. He saw the coming era when men and women would understand that thought is not a shadow but a force, that belief is not illusion but causation, and that the subconscious, once awakened, becomes the silent partner of creation. The law of suggestion, then, is not merely a theory. It is the rhythm of existence, the endless dialogue between mind and matter, between the seen and the unseen. Every belief is a cause, every experience is its effect. To change one's belief is to change one's world. And beyond this law, he intuited yet another, the one that connects suggestion not only with the human mind but with something greater, something infinite. For if suggestion can move the body and thought can shape the world, what of those moments when insight descends unbidden, when wisdom not our own speaks within, when love surpasses the limits of self? Where does such inspire tie arise, if not from a higher dimension of mind? It was toward this higher domain that Hudson's exploration next turned, the mystery of the superconscious, the bridge between the human and the divine. Chapter 3, The Bridge to the Superconscious. When Hudson had mapped the territory of the conscious and the subconscious, he sensed that the structure was incomplete. Two minds could explain suggestion, habit, and the marvels of hypnotism, but they could not explain the highest faculties of man, the sudden illumination of genius, the calm certainty of moral insight, the intuition that arrives without reasoning yet proves unfailingly true. To account for these, he reached upward and outward to a third order of mind, the superconscious. He did not invent the idea. Long before him, the sages of every civilization had spoken of a higher self, a divine spark, a cosmic intelligence that moves through all beings. But Hudson gave the concept a new form, expressing it not in the language of revelation but in the language of law. If the subconscious links us downward to the forces of instinct and memory, he said, then the superconscious links us upward to the infinite intelligence from which all mind proceeds. The human being, poised between these poles, is the bridge between earth and heaven, matter and spirit, the finite and the boundless. To approach the superconscious, Hudson warned, one must lay aside the superstition that separates the natural from the divine. There are not two worlds, he said, one material and one spiritual. There is only one world, and it is alive with intelligence. The visible universe is but the outer crust of a vast field of consciousness, and every mind is a focus within that field. The superconscious is not somewhere else. It is the deeper dimension of the same reality that we already inhabit. He described this realm not as a place but as a condition of awareness. When the restless motion of the conscious mind grows still, when the noise of personal desire subsides, the deeper current becomes perceptible. In that stillness, ideas arise not by effort but by revelation. The poet calls it inspiration, the scientist calls it discovery, the mystic calls it communion. All are faces of the same event, the meeting of the human and the universal mind. Hudson was cautious to keep his language balanced. He did not claim that the superconscious is a supernatural entity whispering messages from beyond the stars. He saw it as a lawful extension of the same principle that governs the subconscious. Where the subconscious reproduces the past, the superconscious opens to the future. Where the subconscious obeys suggestion, the superconscious offers intuition. The one works through memory, the other through imagination. Between them, the conscious mind stands as interpreter and guide. To illustrate, he pointed to the phenomenon of genius. Genius, he said, is not a miracle of intellect but a connection, an unobstructed channel through which higher intelligence flows into human thought. When Mozart heard music complete in his mind before a note was written, when Newton saw the law of gravitation in a falling apple, when Einstein dreamed of riding a beam of light, each was touching the superconscious field. Their insights seemed sudden, but they were prepared by long labor and humility of mind. The conscious effort clears the path. The revelation arrives when the path is open. Hudson observed that such moments often occur in states of relaxation, reverie, or dream. When the conscious will releases its grip, the barrier between the finite and the infinite thins, and the larger mind communicates through symbol, image, or impulse. What the ancients called divine inspiration is this same exchange viewed through the lens of devotion. The prophet, the artist, and the scientist are brothers. Each listens beyond the noise of thought. He wrote that the superconscious possesses knowledge beyond the personal memory. It seems to draw upon a universal reservoir of ideas, a collective intelligence that transcends time. How else could an inventor dream of a mechanism before the materials exist, or a mathematician perceive the solution to an equation not yet conceived? Such knowledge does not come from books or senses. It comes from the silent ocean of mind in which all intellects are waves. In Hudson's day, this notion bordered on heresy. Science clung to the doctrine that thought was a secretion of the brain, and religion feared any explanation that humanized the divine. But Hudson walked between them, saying, both are right and both are incomplete. The brain is the instrument of mind, not its origin, and the divine works through natural law, not outside it. The superconscious is the meeting point of these truths, the law of spirit acting through the mechanism of matter. He likened consciousness to a spectrum of light. At one end lies the narrow band of the objective mind, perceiving the world of sense. At the other lies the radiant field of universal intelligence, beyond individuality. Between them flows the subjective current of the subconscious. Each blends into the next, forming one continuous beam. To awaken spiritually is simply to expand the range of perception along this spectrum, to become aware of what has always been present but unseen. Hudson noted that the superconscious communicates not through words but through intuition and symbol. It speaks in the language of feeling, pattern, and harmony. To hear it, one must learn the art of inner silence. The conscious mind, filled with noise, cannot perceive the subtler vibrations of truth. Only when thought grows still does intuition arise spontaneously, like a spring emerging from beneath a rock. He pointed to the lives of saints and seers who withdrew from the world not to escape it but to hear it more clearly. Their solitude was not isolation but tuning. When the outer sense is quiet, the inner ear opens. In that clarity, guidance appears, not as command but as gentle knowing. The superconscious does not impose, it invites. Its wisdom feels not foreign but native, as though one remembers what one has always known. Hudson saw this faculty in everyday life as well. The mother who senses her child's need across distance, the friend who feels another's sorrow without words, the sudden warning that prevents danger, all are whispers of the higher mind. Telepathy, he suggested, is not miraculous but natural. It is the normal communication of minds that share one field. We are islands only in appearance. Beneath the surface, our thoughts intermingle like currents of the same sea. He argued that prayer itself is a form of communion with the superconscious. When sincere, prayer is not begging but aligning, the conscious mind turning upward in faith, the subconscious accepting the impression, and the superconscious responding through law. Thus the ancient formula, ask and it shall be given, is not magic but mechanism. The asking impresses the idea, the belief sustains it, the higher intelligence provides the way. But Hudson warned that the superconscious cannot be commanded as one commands the subconscious. Suggestion operates through will, Inspiration operates through surrender. To receive from the higher mind, one must cease demanding and begin listening. The door to the infinite opens inward, not outward. When the self grows humble, the greater self reveals itself. He described 3 stages in the ascent of consciousness. First, awareness of thought, the recognition that we are not our passing ideas but the observer behind them. Second, mastery of suggestion, the ability to direct the subconscious through deliberate belief. Third, communion with the superconscious, the realization that even the observer is part of a larger field of awareness. Beyond this lies unity, where the distinction between thinker and thought dissolves, and life is experienced as one harmonious intelligence expressing through many forms. In that realization, fear disappears. For fear is born of separation, of believing oneself an isolated fragment in a hostile universe. When the mind perceives its continuity with the whole, anxiety subsides like a dream upon waking. The individual remains individual, yet knows itself as an expression of the infinite. This, Hudson said, is the secret of serenity. It is not escape from life but participation in its deeper rhythm. He drew attention to the ethical implications of this awareness. If all minds share one source, then every thought directed toward another inevitably returns to oneself. Hatred poisons its author, compassion strengthens both giver and receiver. Thus moral law is not imposed from without but arises from the structure of consciousness itself. To injure another in thought or deed is to injure the field of which we are a part. To love another is to harmonize with the whole. Hudson saw in this unity the foundation of all religion stripped of dogma. The prophets of every faith, he said, have spoken from the superconscious. Their words differ, but their vision is one. They saw the universe as living mind, love as its essence, and the human soul as the instrument through which that love becomes conscious. Their miracles were the natural results of perfect alignment with this law. When Christ healed, when Buddha enlightened, when the saints radiated peace, it was not by breaking the order of nature but by fulfilling it completely. He believed that as humanity evolves, this superconscious awareness will become more common. What was once the privilege of mystics will become the normal faculty of enlightened reason. Science will explore consciousness as it once explored matter, and spirituality will accept law as its divine language. The conflict between faith and reason will dissolve in the realization that both speak of the same reality from different angles. Hudson wrote that the next stage of evolution is psychological rather than physical. The mind must learn to use its own instruments. We have mastered the forces of nature. Now we must master the forces of thought. As long as we remain ignorant of the superconscious, we live half awake, creators who doubt their own power. But when we know that inspiration, intuition, and love are lawful energies flowing from the same source, we begin to live consciously within the whole. He gave practical guidance for those who would approach this state. First, cultivate stillness each day. Let the conscious mind rest from its endless analysis. Second, nurture the imagination, for it is the bridge between the known and the unknown. Third, hold noble ideals, for the superconscious responds to aspiration. And fourth, trust the process of life, for trust opens the channel through which guidance flows. He compared the relationship between the human mind and the superconscious to that of a musician and an instrument. The violin cannot play itself, yet without the violin the music cannot be heard. The superconscious is the musician, the human mind is the instrument. When the strings are tuned, when thought is pure, intention sincere, emotion calm, the divine melody can be expressed without distortion. The task of spiritual development is therefore not to reach the superconscious but to become transparent to it. In the silence of communion, Hudson said, one discovers that the universe is not a machine but a meditation. Every atom vibrates with intelligence. Every event is a dialogue between the visible and the invisible. The stars move by the same harmony that guides intuition. Life is thought made form and thought is life awaiting form. To know this is to glimpse immortality, for consciousness cannot be divided or destroyed, it only changes its focus. From this perspective, death itself loses its terror. The conscious mind may fade, the body may dissolve, but the superconscious endures, carrying the essence of identity into broader realms of experience. Just as dreams arise when the waking senses close, so the higher life begins when the earthly senses rest. The soul passes from one field of awareness to another, always within the one infinite mind. Hudson did not claim to prove immortality, he sought to make it reasonable. If mind is primary and matter secondary, then the continuity of consciousness is more logical than its extinction. The superconscious, being universal, cannot perish, it merely expresses itself through new forms. Thus life is an endless education in awareness, a journey from ignorance to self-knowledge, from separation to unity. He ended his reflections on the superconscious with a vision of human destiny. The purpose of evolution, he said, is not competition but cooperation, not the survival of the fittest but the awakening of the most conscious. The highest power is not control but understanding. When the race learns to live from the superconscious level, war, greed, and fear will lose their foundation. For those emotions belong to the illusion of separateness. The civilization of the future will be founded upon the recognition that consciousness is one and that love is its law. He foresaw an era when education would teach not only facts but self-knowledge, when medicine would heal through mind as well as matter, when religion would guide without coercion, and science would revere without superstition. The superconscious would be understood not as a mystical exception but as the natural culmination of human growth. In that day, he said, the words, "Know thyself," will reveal their ultimate meaning. To know oneself is to know the universe. And so the bridge to the superconscious stands open within every human being. It requires no temple, no priest, no miracle, only awareness. The conscious mind must learn to listen. The subconscious must learn to trust. The superconscious, ever patient, will answer. Through that communion flows the wisdom of ages, the peace that passes understanding, and the quiet realization that all life is one unfolding thought of the infinite. Hudson closed this chapter of his philosophy with a simple statement that shines like a lantern through time. The kingdom of heaven is within because the infinite intelligence is within. To seek it elsewhere is to look into darkness, to find it within is to see all things in light. Thus ends his ascent from the dual mind to the triune mind, from the mechanical to the mystical, from the law of suggestion to the law of inspiration. What remains is the question of will. If the subconscious obeys suggestion and the superconscious offers guidance, what part does the human will play in shaping destiny? Can man consciously cooperate with the laws of his own mind to direct the course of his evolution? To this, Hudson devoted his next inquiry: the exploration of faith, will, and the invisible law. Chapter 4: Faith, Will, and the Invisible Law. When Hudson turned from the superconscious to the question of will, he did so not as a theologian invoking divine power, nor as a moralist urging discipline, but as a scientist tracing the thread of law that runs through the inner world. He had shown that the subconscious is the obedient servant of suggestion and that the superconscious is the silent source of inspiration. Between these two poles stands the conscious will, the directing center through which belief is chosen and energy given shape. The will, he said, is not brute force. It is the capacity to hold an idea steady until it becomes fact. It is attention with faith behind it. Most people think of will as effort, a tightening of the muscles of the mind, but true will is calm persistence, the ability to choose one thought and refuse its opposite. The subconscious responds to conviction, not to struggle. The superconscious answers confidence, not command. Therefore the power of will lies not in assertion but in unwavering belief. Hudson described faith as the emotional counterpart of will. Where will selects, faith sustains. Faith is the warmth that gives life to the seed of an idea. Without it, the most brilliant thought remains sterile. It is not blind belief but the intuitive certainty that law exists and that law will fulfill itself when the right conditions are met. He compared it to the trust a farmer has in the seasons. He cannot see the harvest while he sows, yet he knows the invisible process is faithful. At the center of Hudson's philosophy stands this principle. Every thought impressed upon the subconscious tends to realize itself through law, in proportion to the faith and emotion that accompany it. The universe is not capricious, it is lawful in its subtlest workings. The invisible law operates with the same precision in the realm of thought as gravity does in the realm of matter. Faith and will are the human modes by which we align ourselves with it. He observed that most people misuse the law through ignorance. They worry, fear, resent, and then wonder why their lives mirror anxiety. The subconscious accepts whatever is vividly imagined, whether desired or dreaded. It cannot distinguish between good and evil, hope and fear. It merely reproduces the dominant impression. Thus, to believe in misfortune is to invite it, to expect success is to prepare its coming. The law knows no favoritism, it returns to each according to belief. Hudson did not intend this as a moral lecture. He was describing mechanics, not morality. The invisible law is impersonal. It obeys the pattern of thought as surely as a mirror reflects an image. When the mind learns this, it gains freedom, the power to choose what images it will reflect. That choice is the essence of will. He wrote that every life is an experiment in belief. The skeptic who believes in limitation proves limitation. The mystic who believes in possibility proves possibility. Each validates his conviction by experience. To change one's world, therefore, one must first change one's assumptions about it. The will's highest function is not to coerce reality but to select the idea of reality to which one will be loyal. Hudson illustrated this with countless examples from healing and habit. A man crippled by suggestion may recover when a new belief is impressed. A chronic failure may prosper when he ceases to expect defeat. In every case, the transformation begins within. The outer condition follows the inner conviction as surely as shadow follows form. This is not mysticism, he insisted, but the natural action of mind upon mind, and of mind upon body. Faith then is practical. It is the working recognition of law. To have faith in health is to set the subconscious in motion toward harmony. To have faith in failure is to perpetuate disease. Every affirmation, every word of confidence or despair, is a seed cast into the fertile soil of the inner life. Sooner or later it bears fruit after its kind. But Hudson also warned that faith must be married to wisdom. The law does not exempt one from consequence. A selfish use of mental power rebounds upon its maker. To will injury is to affirm separation, and separation breeds suffering. Therefore the highest faith is not merely belief in personal gain but trust in the benevolent order of the whole. When one's desire aligns with universal good, the law acts without friction. When desire opposes it, conflict arises until harmony is restored. He compared the mind to a lens focusing sunlight. The rays are neutral, but the point of concentration determines the effect. Focused on life, they heal. Focused on hatred, they burn. Faith and will are the hands that hold the lens. Conscience is the compass that aims it. From this principle, Hudson derived a psychology of moral evolution. He believed that the will develops through 3 stages. At first, it is impulsive, driven by desire, ignorant of law. Next, it becomes self-conscious, disciplined, learning cause and effect. Finally, it becomes surrendered, trusting the superconscious guidance that flows from unity. This last stage is the true freedom of the soul, the will of the part harmonized with the will of the whole. He illustrated this harmony through the image of music. Each note is distinct yet finds meaning only in the melody. If one note insists on sounding apart, dissonance results. So too with the human will. Isolation breeds discord, but alignment creates beauty. To do the will of God, in Hudson's language, meant to act in resonance with the invisible law, not in defiance of it. He was careful to distinguish faith from credulity. Blind belief is unstable, it lacks understanding and therefore wavers under doubt. True faith rests on perception of order. It sees that thought precedes manifestation as surely as the seed precedes the tree. Because it knows the process, it need not strain for results. Its calmness is its strength. Hudson admired the stoic composure of those who trust silently in the unseen. He noted that the most effective healers and inventors often display quiet confidence, not excitement. Their calm is evidence of alignment. They do not force the law, they cooperate with it. They hold their mental image as one holds a lantern in darkness, steady, patient, unwavering, until dawn reveals what was always there. He extended the principle of the invisible law beyond individual psychology into the collective. Nations too, he said, live by their beliefs. A civilization that worships fear reaps violence. One that trusts justice grows strong. Every social order is a projection of the collective subconscious of its people. Therefore reform begins not with laws and armies but with ideas. Change the habitual thought of a nation, and its destiny alters as surely as the course of a river diverted at its source. In this way, Hudson united spirituality with social science. He saw history as the evolution of faith, from the worship of external powers to the recognition of inner law. Primitive man believed in gods who controlled fate. Modern man begins to see that fate is the reflection of belief. The invisible law has always been active. We are only now becoming conscious of it. He foresaw a future psychology that would treat belief as energy. Just as physical science measures electricity, this future science would measure the intensity of conviction and the forms it creates. Miracles, he said, are simply results produced by strong faith acting in accordance with unknown law. When the law is understood, the miracle becomes natural. The task of the coming age is not to deny miracles but to study them until they are no longer mysterious. Hudson urged his readers to experiment. Choose one small area of life, he said, health, work, friendship, and deliberately hold a constructive belief about it. Nurture that belief daily with quiet confidence, excluding its opposite. Observe the results. Through such personal demonstration, faith matures from theory into certainty. Belief verified by experience becomes knowledge, and knowledge strengthens will. This is the true education of the soul. He He reminded his students that emotion is the carrier wave of faith. A thought without feeling is like a seed without moisture, it cannot germinate. Therefore gratitude, love and joy are not sentimental luxuries but vital forces in mental creation. When one feels thankful in advance, the subconscious reads that feeling as evidence that the desired state already exists and proceeds to embody it. Thus faith works by love and will by joy. The gloomy reformer and the fearful believer cripple their own power. Hudson's conception of will reached its summit in the idea of co-creation. Man is not a beggar before the universe but a participant in its ongoing creation. Through imagination and conviction he extends the creative process of nature. Every invention, every work of art, every act of kindness is a continuation of the divine will expressed through human form. To discover this partnership is to understand the sacredness of all endeavor. He said that faith without will is dream, will without faith is strain. Only when they unite does creation become effortless. The conscious mind holds the image, the subconscious accepts it, the superconscious supplies the wisdom and opportunity, and the invisible law unites them in manifestation. This fourfold harmony, idea, belief, intuition, and law, is the symphony of human progress. Hudson compared it to sailing. The wind of the superconscious is constant, the sea of the subconscious is deep, the helm of will directs the course, and faith fills the sails. The sailor cannot command the wind but he can set his canvas to receive it. He cannot calm the sea but he can steer by its rhythm. So the wise use of mind is navigation, not domination. He also explored the shadow side of will, the misuse that breeds tyranny and obsession. When the conscious mind attempts to dominate others through suggestion or fear, it violates the unity of consciousness. Such acts, though temporarily successful, recoil upon their maker. The law of balance restores equilibrium, sometimes through suffering. True power is cooperative, not coercive. To impose is to lose, to inspire is to rule. Hudson found in this truth the reconciliation of ethics and science. The moral injunctions of religion, love thy neighbor, forgive thine enemy, are not arbitrary virtues but practical necessities in a universe of mental law. To hate is to affirm division, to forgive is to restore unity. One who understands the invisible law cannot hate without harming himself, cannot lie without darkening his own mind. The universe is self-correcting. Every discord seeks resolution in harmony. From this he derived a new definition of prayer and meditation. Prayer, he said, is the act of aligning the personal will with the universal. Meditation is the quiet adjustment of thought to truth. When prayer is sincere and understanding, it ceases to be petition and becomes participation. The will no longer asks, grant me this, but whispers, let me see as truth sees. In that surrender, paradoxically, the greatest power is found. Hudson wrote that the invisible law answers every thought according to its kind, but not always in the form expected. Sometimes faith brings growth through challenge, sometimes will finds fulfillment through relinquishment. The law's purpose is not to gratify every desire but to educate desire toward wisdom. What we call disappointment is often correction. The universe, being intelligent, gives us not what we wish but what we truly will in our depths. He observed that faith, when purified of fear, becomes serenity. The person who trusts the law lives without hurry. He does what is before him with full attention and leaves the outcome to the larger order. Such a life radiates quiet authority. It influences others not by argument but by example. Its power is invisible yet unmistakable, like gravity holding the planets in place. Hudson foresaw that psychology would one day rediscover this law under new names: expectancy, creative visualization, self-efficacy. But the essence would remain the same. Consciousness shapes experience through belief. He urged the thinkers of his time to unite the language of science with the insights of spirit, for only together could they reveal the full scope of human nature. Toward the end of his study, Hudson posed a final question. If faith and will govern individual destiny, is there also a universal faith and a cosmic will guiding the destiny of worlds? He answered cautiously but beautifully, yes. Just as each cell in the body contributes to the health of the whole, each mind contributes to the evolution of universal consciousness. The invisible law that responds to human belief is itself the expression of a greater intelligence believing in us. Creation is the faith of God made visible. To live in accord with that faith is the highest freedom. It is to see that every moment offers choice: fear or trust, separation or unity, complaint or gratitude. Each choice is a seed, and the invisible law ensures the harvest. The wise choose love not because it is moral but because it is mathematical. It works. In his closing pages, Hudson returned to simplicity. He said that all his philosophy might be summed in 3 sentences. There is one law, the law of mind and action. Thought is creative through faith. Love is the fulfilling of the law. To live by this is to participate consciously in the evolution of the soul and of the world. The will directs, faith sustains, and the invisible law accomplishes. When these act together, the human being becomes what he was meant to be, a conscious co-creator with the infinite. And so Hudson's long journey, from the study of hypnotism to the science of consciousness, ends not in speculation but in peace. He had sought to prove that the phenomena of mind are lawful, that faith is not superstition, and that will is the mechanism by which spirit shapes matter. He left behind not a religion but a roadmap, a bridge between psychology and the soul. The reader who understands him no longer asks, "What power governs my life?" He knows the answer, the power of belief acting through law. To know this is to hold the key to destiny, not as a promise of ease but as an invitation to conscious creation. The invisible law waits only our recognition, and faith is the hand that turns the key. Epilogue: The future science of the soul. When Thomson Jay Hudson laid down his pen in the closing years of the 19th century, the world stood at the threshold of a new century of science. The telegraph had linked continents, the electric light had conquered night, and the microscope had revealed the infinitesimal. Yet for all these triumphs of matter, Hudson sensed a deeper revolution stirring beneath the surface, a dawning realization that the greatest frontier was not outer space but inner space. He called it the coming science of the soul. He believed that humanity's next discovery would not be of new stars or new species, but of new dimensions of consciousness. For millennia, religion had spoken of spirit and science of matter. Hudson saw the two converging. The old wall between physics and metaphysics would crumble, he said, not through mysticism nor through skepticism, but through a deeper understanding of law. Mind, he declared, is the common denominator, the invisible matrix through which both matter and spirit find expression. He foresaw an age when thought itself would be measured, when psychology would take its place beside chemistry and astronomy as an exact science. Not a science of dissecting brains but a science of understanding awareness, how ideas shape physiology, how emotion directs energy, how faith moves mountains because faith moves the laws that move the world. This, he said, would be the true dawn of the 20th century, the uniting of intellect and intuition, laboratory and altar. To call it a science of the soul was not to reduce spirit to formula, but to reveal that spirit operates by law. For Hudson, law was sacred precisely because it was universal. If the infinite is real, it cannot be arbitrary, it must express itself consistently through every plane of being. Therefore, to understand the laws of consciousness is to understand the language of the divine. To violate them is to suffer, to harmonize with them is to live in peace. The commandments of heaven, he wrote, are the equations of nature spoken in a higher key. He looked ahead and saw psychology moving beyond pathology into creativity. The study of neurosis would give way to the study of genius, the analysis of memory to the exploration of inspiration. One day, he said, the powers we now call extraordinary will be recognized as natural faculties of an awakened mind. Telepathy will be understood as the transmission of thought through a common mental medium. Healing by faith will be seen as the normal restoration of balance through belief. Even death will be recognized not as extinction but as transition, a change of focus within the one field of consciousness. Hudson's voice was prophetic but never fanatical. He warned that knowledge of law without reverence leads to chaos. Science, he said, must learn humility before the mystery it studies. Religion must learn accuracy before the law it invokes. Only when these two attitudes meet, humility and accuracy, can the future science of the soul be born. For the mind that observes the stars and the heart that prays to heaven are seeking the same truth through different senses. He imagined universities where psychology would be taught not merely as the mechanics of behavior but as the architecture of being. Students would learn to train attention, direct emotion, and master suggestion as deliberately as they now learn mathematics. Meditation would be understood as mental hygiene, imagination as the instrument of creation. The subconscious would no longer be feared as the dark cellar of impulse but revered as the fertile ground of genius. And the superconscious, once the province of mystics, would be studied as the summit of human evolution. In such a world, education would begin with self-knowledge. Children would be taught from the start that thoughts are living things, that every word carries weight in the unseen, that belief shapes experience. They would learn emotional balance as a form of physics, ethics as a form of energy management, prayer as the alignment of intention with universal law. Society itself would mature beyond punishment toward understanding. The criminal would be seen as one whose subconscious has been misdirected, Rehabilitation would begin with re-education of belief. Hudson envisioned medicine transformed as well. Doctors of the future, he said, will treat the mind and body as one continuum. They will understand that suggestion can alter chemistry, that hope accelerates recovery, that despair impedes it. Drugs and surgery will remain tools, but the greatest healing force will be faith guided by knowledge. Every hospital will contain not only instruments for the body but rooms for silence, where the patient learns to cooperate consciously with the power that sustains him. He dreamed of religion reborn without sect or superstition. In that day, the preacher and the scientist will sit side by side, each humbling the other and enlarging himself. Dogma will give way to direct experience, authority to awareness. The temples of the future will be schools of consciousness, where worship means wonder and prayer means participation. The divine will no longer be distant. It will be recognized as the very life of thought and love within each being. Hudson's contemporaries smiled at such visions, yet history has moved slowly toward them. Today we see glimpses of the world he foresaw, psychology merging with neuroscience, meditation entering medicine, physics speaking of fields that respond to observation. The language changes but the truth remains. Consciousness is the first fact. Everything else is commentary. The universe does not merely contain life, it is alive. Hudson's term psychic phenomena has long since been replaced by subtler phrases, parapsychology, consciousness studies, quantum cognition, but the essence of his vision endures. He dared to suggest that mind is fundamental and that law is universal. He stood at the crossroads between Victorian skepticism and modern mysticism and drew a map that pointed beyond both. In that sense, his work was not of the 19th century at all, it was of the 21st. The science of the soul, he said, will not destroy mystery, it will deepen it. As understanding grows, wonder will grow also, for each solved riddle reveals a deeper harmony. To know that thought creates form is not to lose reverence but to gain it. When one sees that every word, every gesture, every intention sets unseen causes in motion, one begins to walk gently, speak truthfully, and love universally. Knowledge will not make men proud but kind. In the age to come, the scientist will meditate before an experiment. The mystic will record data of inner experience with the precision of a physicist. The two paths will converge into one endeavor, to understand consciousness as the source of all phenomena. And out of that union will arise a new civilization, neither materialist nor ascetic, but balanced. A culture of awakened minds using law to serve compassion. Hudson believed that evolution itself is the education of consciousness. Each epoch trains the soul in a new lesson. Survival, cooperation, reason, creativity, and finally, awareness of awareness. We are now entering that final school. Our technologies mirror our minds, our crises mirror our contradictions. If we would heal the world, we must first heal thought. The science of the soul is not a luxury, it is the next necessity. He foresaw that humanity's collective subconscious would one day awaken, much as the individual subconscious awakens under suggestion. A shared idea held with enough conviction by enough people can alter the course of history. When that idea is love rather than fear, unity rather than division, the species will step into a higher octave of evolution. That, he said, is the destiny of mind on Earth, to become transparent to the infinite. In his final reflections, Hudson wrote that immortality is not a reward but a condition already present. The superconscious, being universal, cannot perish. The individual, being a focus of that universality, endures as long as consciousness endures, and consciousness is eternal. Death is but a shift in vibration, a transition from visible to invisible. To know this is to be free from the oldest terror. The science of the soul will not argue immortality, it will demonstrate it. He imagined the scientist of the future gazing not through a telescope but inward through the lens of meditation, mapping the galaxies of mind. He imagined new instruments sensitive to thought itself, detecting the ripple of intention as surely as a seismograph detects an earthquake. He imagined art reborn as the expression of higher states of awareness, music tuned to heal the nervous system, architecture designed to harmonize with the rhythm of breath. Every craft, every science, every form of human work will become an extension of the one creative law. Yet Hudson ended his vision not with grandeur but with simplicity. He said the future science of the soul begins not in laboratories but in daily life. It begins when one human being chooses love over fear, patience over haste, truth over convenience. Each such choice aligns a particle of the collective mind with the superconscious order. The great transformations of history, he said, are the accumulations of countless invisible decisions made in quiet hearts. Therefore never think that a single act of kindness is lost, It is a seed in the field of eternity. He foresaw that as knowledge of mental law spreads, human relationships will change. Competition will yield to cooperation because each will know that another's good is his own. The old struggle of classes and nations will fade as minds learn to synchronize rather than dominate. Societies will govern themselves by understanding rather than fear. Justice will be seen not as punishment but as restoration of harmony. The true civilization, he said, will be the one that regards consciousness as sacred. And he ended with a vision of the individual at peace. When a man or woman learns the rhythm of the invisible law, life ceases to be conflict and becomes music. The will becomes melody, faith becomes harmony, and the soul becomes the silent listener in whom the song resounds. Every experience, pleasant or painful, is recognized as a note contributing to the whole. Sorrow teaches depth, joy teaches expansion, together they form wisdom. Nothing is wasted because all is movement. Toward greater awareness. Hudson's closing words read like a benedict. Ion to an unborn century, man is not a stranger in the universe, nor a puppet of blind forces. He is a thinker in the thought of God. As he learns to think in harmony with that infinite mind, his destiny will unfold as naturally as tea. He flower opens to the sun. The flower has begun to open. Every discovery of consciousness, every act of compassion, every intuition that unites instead of divides, is a petal unfolding. The science of the soul is not confined to books. It lives in the quiet awakening of humanity to itself. And so we come full circle. The conscious mind observes, the subconscious creates, the superconscious inspires, and the invisible law unites them all. Faith is the bridge, will is the motion, and love is the light that reveals the path. The journey Hudson began more than a century ago continues in every seeker who looks inward not for escape but for understanding. The future he foresaw is not distant. It is here, waiting within. For the laboratory of the soul is the silent chamber of one's own awareness. When we enter it with reverence, experiment with honesty, and record with wonder, we participate in the oldest and newest of sciences, the exploration of consciousness itself, and the voice that speaks there, beyond the surface of thought, beyond the limits of language, whispers as T has whispered since the beginning. Be still and know that you are. Indy. Thank you for tuned with Vidira. Share and subscribe for knowledge and wisdom.